hookup culture, sexual immorality. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be diving into all of it with our co-host, Steve Guymers. Thank you so much for being here again.
Hi, good to be here this lovely Sunday morning. Ready to go. We've got a meaty subject to talk about. I think we're going to cross some lines here, possibly, but we're going to try and cover as much as we can. It's a big subject, and Rory and I were saying earlier on, there's a lot of aspects to this which we'd wanted to speak about as particular subjects like narcissism and things like that, which we've mentioned. But I think we're going to creep into some of that. You'll see how we go anyway. We'll see how this conversation goes. But thanks again, Rory, for letting me be co-host with you. I love doing these, and I'm really hoping that everybody who listens gets something out of it. I certainly do. It's it's cathartic in many respects to be able to talk about these things. And I think what I love is that we have an opportunity to discuss meaty, difficult subjects that aren't normally discussed. How many people actually would have this conversation? Seriously, okay, you might say something in a conversation, but how many people would sit and listen to a conversation about hookup culture, sexual immorality, the current times, for an hour and a half? So I'm hoping we're going to cover some interesting stuff. And most importantly, this series of talks is called Incite. And it's not only insight from the point of view that it gives you insight. I hope it incites you to do something.
Amen.
And that's what we're hoping, really. So, yeah, great. Looking forward to it.
Brilliant to have you here. How are you doing in general?
Yeah, all good, actually. Can't complain. I must admit, the weather's been shit, and I'm kind of like everybody else, beginning to wonder whether, the chemtrails and things like that are affecting my brain. But then again, I'm a conspiracy theorist, so, what are you going to expect from me, Rory, other than coming up with something totally bonkers?
The chemtrails. Thanks for being here. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It means a lot in your ears and eyes. Please do share this if you do enjoy it. But enough of the promotion, enough of the self-plug. Let's jump into this. So let's start off by talking about hookup culture. So as a young person growing up today, hookup culture in your day was, you speak for it, I guess.
Well, yeah, I grew up, like I've mentioned before, I grew up, my sort of, early development into the world of meeting up with the opposite sex was in the early 80s. And really, it was almost encouraged in some respects that we would get to meet girls. And, we had discos. That's what was it. That's what we had. We had discos. So you'd go to a disco and, if you look at generations past that have tea dances or that have some sort of environment, and I don't know if ever you've watched that lovely film, A Wonderful, Wonderful Life.
Have you been meaning to? The Christmas one.
Yeah, mate.
So
it's Christmas, but it is. You can watch it anytime. But obviously, in that, it's about a boy and a girl who meet up, and it's interesting about how they're introduced and how they get to know each other. And again, it's 1950s, very kind of conservative approach. Kissing was really bad. Let alone heavy petting or anything like that. So, but from my young sort of early years of being interested in the opposite sex, and I guess there are guys who are interested in the same sex and girls who are interested in the same sex. We're all made differently, but generally speaking, we're talking about heterosexual relationships here. I would say that it was always a challenge to try and find a girl, and I think the opportunity to mix at events, like we used to go to the tennis club with these tennis club discos that went on, and at the cricket club. So, the mums would help organise it, and there'd be music. And I think it was a way of the mums, because I remember a lot of the mums being around then. I'm talking when I'm 16, 17. Wow. Okay, so it was quite regular for the mums to organise this, because I think they knew that it was important for us to meet boyfriends and girlfriends, and rather than it happening in an environment where they had no control or they couldn't oversee it, they used to organise these lovely events. And basically there'd be music. Yeah, of course we'd get drunk, and then towards the end of the evenings we used to sneak off into the changing rooms. If you met someone nice, you'd go and have a snog in the changing rooms, and it was pretty tame stuff really. And look, we've got to be a bit cautious because it's a really awkward topic to talk about because everybody gets shy about it, okay, and especially the British. For some reason we have these Victorian standards where Germany, Scandinavia, they're a lot more open about this, nakedness and being boys and girls. They've got a very different approach, and it's seen as a very natural part of development, which it should be. And so I think from my point of view and my experience, we moved from arranged parties where you'd arrange to meet someone, or you would within your friendship circle. So there'd be the boys that went to my school meeting the girls that went to the schools nearby, and that carried on through actually. And even when I joined the army at Sandhurst, again that was sort of encouraged, and there was a couple of finishing schools near Sandhurst, and it's a ballet school actually, called Elmhurst if I remember correctly. And so what would happen was they would organise Scottish dancing evenings. So the young officer cadets would meet with these lovely girls, and obviously you're looking to meet a partner, aren't you? That's the whole point of it, that you'd meet someone and you'd get experience of having relationships, and again they were controlled events. Things would happen sort of outside of that. People would hook up and go outside. Now this hookup culture and this term hookup, I used the term one day and I said to someone, "Oh, let's hook up," and she turned around to me and she goes, "What? Do you want to have sex with me?" And I was like, she was joking, and I went, no, hook. She goes, "Well, you know what hookup means, don't you?" And I was like, because you can use it like to hook up, to meet someone, okay, but it actually means to have sex. So we've got to be precise that what we're talking about is...
it's random people having sex with random people.
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about random...
Non-monogamous
sexual meetings. So, that's a little bit of background from how I came to this. So, again, pornography was something that is on the periphery of this because your sexual appetite will determine your motivations and how you exist in this world of dating, meeting other people. And I think some people who have particularly high libidos would want to meet more girls and more boys or whatever sex you are. And again, that's frowned on, isn't it? It's frowned upon in our society, which is why we're discussing it. I think the problem is that from those early days of what I would describe as innocent flirtations with the opposite sex and, dancing together, then possibly having a snog in the changing rooms or behind the bike sheds, as, everyone used to do. It's now moved to a place where, it is reached levels of, if I can use the word perversion... Depravity, that's probably a better word, of depravity, which I think is even shocking for some people who take part in it, but it, again, like everything in society, we're being conditioned to believe this is normal. So what is normal? Actually, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
What is normal? What is normal behavior? Okay. Now, as a practicing Christian and someone who endeavors to try to lead a godly and Christian life, and I have to say, I have in my past failed miserably, but the wonderful thing about the Christian faith is that, we have forgiveness, and we know that we have a loving God who knows that we mess up on a regular basis, and that we are able to come to him and ask for forgiveness, and he will forgive us. But there comes a point when you can't just keep repeating your mistakes and asking for forgiveness. He'll forgive you because he knows how flawed we are. But one of the problems I have discussing with this is because you can sound very prudish, and people say, "Oh, blooming heck, Steve, you sound like a right prude." Well, I am, as I've matured, because I've seen the damage that happens to people. And it's not just you and that partner. A story's just come into my head. Sorry, I'm talking a little bit.
No, it's brilliant.
I'm not letting you talk, Rory, but a story came to my head just now where this is like, when I was married, I got a phone call from an old friend of mine who'd been one of my kind of like wingmen in the day, when we used to go around to parties and discos, and we used to dress up as new romantics, which is a bit bizarre. And, what was that guy? Adamant, all that kind of stuff, new romantics. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that. You're looking vaguely at me, but it was a great culture. So we all used to dress up and go to these parties because that's what you did in those days. That whole thing was part of the culture of youth culture. Anyway, I hadn't spoken to him for donkey's years, and he'd moved to Australia. He rang me up, really excited to speak to me, saying he and his wife were coming to England, would love to meet me. I said, yeah, it'd be great to meet you. So we met up, and he told me that he had an open relationship with his wife.
Oh, God.
So I was like, and I'd just become a Christian at that point, okay? So I was like, right, okay, how do I deal with this, okay? So, and he was telling me how great it was because, they had this like open relationship and they respected each other's kind of desire to, meet other people and stuff like that. And I was scratching my head. I was thinking, no, this is a recipe for disaster because, and I said this to him. I said, look, it might be fine between the two of you. Okay, you two have an open relationship and you appreciate that. But what if you start to disturb other people's relationships who don't have that? What kind of damage are you going to cause to them?
Or if a kid's grown up,
yeah,
and even in the sense of them being an island and having a good time, which I think on many more levels is reprehensible.
Yeah.
I think that you are breaking what love is, because when temptation or when you're not sacrificing anything for someone, what is the act of love? It's a mere action based on emotion, and the whole point of love is it's greater than that. But when you bring love to impulse, I mean, you're not in love there. You're in degeneracy, and you are in you are manipulating yourself to convince yourself that's love. You could say that's love, but I would say to anyone out there listening who thinks that an open relationship can be loving, I say, well, what's your definition of love? Because if your definition of love is given into impulses, then yeah, by all means, that's
lust,
love.
Isn't it?
That's lust.
I mean, the problem is you've used the L word, love, which I was holding back from. I was going to bring that in, and you're absolutely right, because in a monogamous relationship, or if you introduce me to someone who you say your wife, then I'm immediately, quite rightly, assuming that you have a loving relationship. Now, so this is I recently got married as well, so I'm in a solid married loving relationship with my wife at the time. And suddenly I've got this friend of mine who's coming and trying to show me this. Anyway, very quickly, to cut long story short, he went out for drinks with me and a bunch of his old mates that we got together because we hadn't seen him for a little while. And I said, oh, where's your wife? Oh, she's gone to see an old flame of hers. So I was like, are you for real? So your wife's gone to see somebody else who she's potentially going to have sex with. You're out with us and you're happy with that? He said, yeah, I don't, this is what he said. He said, we don't suffer from jealousy.
Oh, blimey.
So I was like, okay, listen, I'm really struggling with this. I said to him, I'm finding it difficult because you don't know what damage you're going to do to other people. What is the collateral damage that you're going to do? Anyway, as the evening went by, he ended up having to crash out at my place because I can't remember. We got drunk and he was going to crash out. And he was downstairs in the living room. I was upstairs. I get a knock on the door at about 3:00 in the morning. Hi, Steve. I said, yeah. He said, I've got a bit of a problem. I said, what's happened? He said, I've just had a call from my wife and she needs me to go and pick her up. So I said, well, where is she? And she was like somewhere in Croydon, and we're like living in Reigate at the time. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get that. It's 3:00 in the morning. He said, no, she's in really quite a bad way. Can we drive and pick her up? And I was like, it's 3:00 in the morning. I've had a couple of beers. We've been drinking, and now you want me to drive and go and get her? And he said, well, it's pretty bad. I said, what's happened? What's happened? And I'm kind of thinking, oh, when someone is just a complete divot, and when you say, don't touch that, don't do that, and they go and do it, okay? Anyway, cut long story short, it turns out she'd gone to see her previous lover who was in a relationship. And guess what happened? His wife had come back, found them at it, and gone completely ballistic. Had kind of thrown things at this woman and tried to beat this woman up. Now, she'd been kicked out. She's wandering the streets in Streatham or wherever it was. And I could see how this had gone. So that was one of the most shocking examples of, and possibly an extreme example of someone using the cover of marriage to behave in a immoral way, which and people might say right now, well, what's wrong with that, Steve? What's wrong? We're allowed to do what we want. You can do what you want. I really don't.
Yeah, it really sometimes like that argument. If you're someone out there who says, "Oh, I just want to do what I want," if you think that's a valid discrediting of what we say, like what universe are you living in? That like you can criticize something but still say someone has the right to do it. That's why. Like by your logic, we should just go around not criticizing anything because I'm doing what I want, and it's such a ludicrous argument. But sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, this is why. And the problem is, I can imagine a lot of people getting their hackles up because, they're saying, well, how can you be so judgmental? Okay, now I'm not judging you. I'm reporting an event that happened.
Well, I'll flip that. I personally, I think there is a place in society for judgment, and I think that part of what we're talking about today, which is hookup culture, because there is so little judgment, people think they can just do things and there's no social ramifications. And there's another episode which we'll do about some of the repercussions of hookup culture, but. I actually believe, and this is really controversial, and I know I'll get a bit of pushback for this, but I think in many ways in society we actually need more judgment for young people. I think that one of the things young people suffer with one of the most is lack of judgment of people's actions when it comes to massive things like having sex with someone. And people could say, "Oh, who are you to say that? Who are you to say that?" I will say it, and I get flack for it all the time when I actually put two forks in the ground and say something, but I will say it because I believe it is immoral to go around sleeping with random people. I believe the repercussions of that, not only from a simply individualistic moral level of, how that will affect your future partner, your marriage, your kids, whatever, and respect for yourself, but also societatively, like potentially, I don't know, a wild one, having a kid or like, but we won't go into that. But I just want to say that because I get a lot of flack sometimes for coming across that way. And I do have compassion that people have different circumstances. If you've been raped, if you've been badly treated as a kid, you will feel more craving for love. And it's sad that we have people out there who take advantage of that. And it's sad that a lot of women, for instance, feel that that's all they have to offer is their body. It's really sad. And I think for the most part, it's just scummy men in this situation, not really women. I don't think almost any woman wants to just sleep around and be treated like an object. Very, very few women want that. I think men need to kind of step up in this cultural play. But I will say it is wrong. And I'm not afraid to say that. And I'm not saying that as, oh, I personally think it's wrong. No, I believe it is wrong. Like, full stop.
It's interesting so I'm cautious about using the word judgment, okay? You'll see where I'm going with this. Because as a Christian, people say to me, who are you to judge me? Now, that's very interesting, actually, because ultimately I believe that only God can judge us. We can have an opinion and we can take a judgmental approach. But I want to bring in another word, which is shame. Okay, it's not. I agree with you. We should judge people what I mean is we should express a concern about someone's behavior. Now, if you want to feel that's me judging you, that's your issue. But I have taken a position, which is my opinion, on how your behavior is. And if you're behaving in a shameful way, when was the last time you heard someone say, I'm ashamed of my behavior? Or when was that word shame? Have you noticed how shame has been ushered out of our vocabulary? You can't use that anymore, okay? So what people say is, oh, you're judging me. No, I'm not judging you. I think your behavior is shameful. People don't suffer from shame because everybody is so kind of like, if you don't suffer shame, it means that you think that everything you do is right, okay? If you do something wrong, if you transgress a moral line, you are behaving shamefully. And the problem is, right now, I know there's going to be a lot of people cringing at the fact that I'm saying, and I'm pointing it out, and I'm saying if you behave a certain way, you should feel shame. Okay? And that's something that I think needs to hit home. It needs to hit home because our behaviors determine the world we live in. And the more immoral, and what I mean by morality is, and this is again the issue of speaking about these things as a Christian. Okay, I take my lead from the behavior of Jesus Christ and the things he said and he taught, and then from a wider perspective, what the apostles, men who were close to him, men who were inspired and aspired to be like him, what they taught. 2,000 years ago, we were given a blueprint for moral behavior. And moral behavior means that if we behave moralistically, correctly, if we behave in a way that's not shameful, then the world will be a better place because we're showing love and respect for each other. Okay, love and respect. Treat others as you would have them treat you. Okay, which means that if you want to have a relationship with someone, it's not about just going and having sex, because you can do that if you really want to do that. But if you continue to do that, what you're doing is you're degrading the beautiful gift that God gave us, which is meant to be used in an intimate setting, an intimate setting where a man and a woman come together in order because they love each other, and their language of love, the physical language of love, is to have sex, which is why it's called making love. Okay, and funny enough, the word sex. Funny enough, I'd really like to look at when and why it was used to describe the act of making love. Okay, sexual intercourse. Okay, having sex. There's a whole area, here which we could start to delve into. I've got some Bible passages which I want to read. I'm not going to bring them up just yet. I'll save them for a little bit later on as we dig in deep. But going back to what you were saying about my childhood and growing up and my experiences of this, all I can say is that I'm just so happy I grew up when I did, because I think, like I've said in other podcasts we've done, you guys have a really tough time. And I honestly mean this. Anybody listening who is struggling with sexual immorality or struggling with controlling yourself, hey, you know what? I'm not perfect. When I was younger, I wasn't perfect. Okay, I know what you're going through. I understand it, but you've got to find a way of pulling back on that. Someone once said to me, this is an interesting thing. Someone once said, women give sex for love, men give love for sex. Okay, so the relationship is that men will offer love for sex, women offer sex for love. So it's
that's fascinating.
Yeah, and again, gender specific. We're talking about genders, but I think ultimately most people want to have a loving relationship. Want to be in a loving relationship. Oxytocin, I'm going to bring in oxytocin. Okay, oxytocin is that really good feel-good hormone compound that's released when you do something nice. Okay, and the interesting thing is what they've discovered is that, I'm going to just use a separate example. They've discovered that when men, as fathers, play with their children, play games and just interact with their children, they get huge releases of oxytocin. Okay, it's pleasurable, it's lovely, it's a beautiful thing, it's a loving thing. When women nurture children, they get the same kick. They get that oxytocin. So a woman's position of nurturing, looking after the child, compared to a man wanting to play games and interact with the child on that physical level, is where the oxytocin kicks in. But there's also some research that's been done to show that the more sexual partners you have, the more you struggle to release oxytocin. Okay, so oxytocin is almost like a love compound. It's a love element in your body, and there's a finite amount of it if you think of it this way. And I've often wondered that if you go through life having multiple partners, because sex is meant to be a loving act, it's pseudo love, isn't it? It's lust. And this is what we have a big problem in our society. People will say they love each other when in actual fact they don't love each other. They love having sex with each other, which is lust. As I've mentioned before, there are 7 words for love in Greek. I'll try and look them up because I can never remember all of them, but there's agape, eros, philia. The one I want to bring to attention is eros. Eros is erotic love, okay? Agape is a father's love. The Greeks had a beautiful linguistic history, a linguistic style. We don't have that in our language. We just have love. And they had 7 different meanings for the word love. And I'll read them out in a minute when I can find the list of them.
I mean, that's, very, very powerful what you said. And I think to young people listening, it's often not talked about. It changes what gender you are. If you're a woman, I wouldn't say it's promoted to sleep around. I mean, maybe, having said that, there are some, Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, there are certain big influencers who would, I guess, promote that kind of degenerate lifestyle. But I think growing up as a man, I think it is encouraged to be sexually immoral in your actions. And I think that has a play to do with secularism, which we see on the rise in the West, especially with young people, and it's kind of all intertwined. And that's why I often say things to people like, regardless of if you believe in God or not, if you live that way, that will be the most fruitful. And similar to what you said about partners, even if people want to say, oh, I'm just having fun, the repercussions of you just having fun will be your own downfall. So it's a lose-lose game. You're never going to outpace your own lust or want. And also similarly, when like in life, we apply this to exercise, we apply this to diet, we apply this to work, we apply this to everything about resisting temptation, working hard, or striving for something greater, or being something greater. However, when it comes to sex, it seems like there's just it almost doesn't exist anymore. And to simply act like it does exist, you're some sort of judgmental, crazy Christian guy. And I think that there needs to be a serious awakening, and that's why with this podcast I like what we're doing, because I know that there'll be young people listening right now who will look at having sex with someone as more than just having sex with them or making love with someone. They will view it as love of what it is. And I hope that's why I always say I hope this makes people okay to think certain things. But do you want to read the...
Yeah, I just want to cover this off. And you're absolutely right, Rory, because you're very good to bring in these things. Secularism. Again, like I said to you, I'd love to do a comparison of the increase of secularism and atheism, and maybe the degradation of morality. Is there a relationship? I think there is. And I don't think it takes a genius to work out that there is a link with that. I just want to read out these out of interest, just read these words, because they're quite fascinating, actually. And it probably gives some of you a different view. And because you can say something like, oh, I really love Guinness. I really love that dog. Or I love, I love my friend. But we're using that love word, okay? But the Greeks had these words. These are the 7 Greek words. So if I can read these out quickly. Eros is romantic, passionate love, but it's the basis of erotic love, eros. Philia is intimate, authentic friendship, like brotherhood. So if you love like, I could say I love you, Rory. as a brother, and that's philia. Okay, then I'm going to struggle pronouncing some of these. There's erotoropia or ludus, which is playful or flirtatious love, which is that you'd have like with a kid. You love playing with the child because it's, I'm not quite sure it's flirtatious. I don't know how that one applies. I've got to look into that a little bit more. But it's playful love. Then you've got storge, which is unconditional familial love, which is the parental love. It's storge, storge is the love, unconditional, and that is, in my opinion, the purest form of love. The love that I have for my children, I can't even explain it. And any parent, like you have for your brother and sister, that is unconditional. Generally speaking, we will do anything. We'll give up our lives for that person. Then there's another one which is, it's got an unfortunate philotia, which sounds like something else, but that is compassionate self-love. So it's feeling compassion, and pragma is committed companion love, pragmatic love, almost. And then finally, agape, which is empathetic universal love. So these are the examples. I mean, I'd highly recommend any of you just spend a bit of time considering what love is. Do you remember those little cartoons, what love is? And there were these, I don't know if you remember.
I don't remember.
No, it was in the 70s and 80s. There were these little cartoons of a boy and a girl, and it would try and describe. There were tons of cartoons. You get like booklets off them, and they were very simple line cartoon drawings of a girl and a boy, and it would say love is this, and then he'd be giving her flowers. Love is buying flowers, and it had all these different things. And if you think about it, love makes the world go round. So why do we live in a world where it is subordinated to lust?
Is a big question, and I guess so. Moving on to why this is happening so much with young people, because it's interesting. Young people having less sex than ever, but they're hooking up more. So their average, the differences in people they get with before marriage is increasing, but the amount of sex they're having is depleted. So it's actually they're having more meaningless, shallow sex rather than intimate depth, which is, I mean, it's bad in both ways on many, many, many levels. I guess, why do you think this is happening? Because I see it in my life. I see I question some of my friends in some of the actions they do, and I don't endorse it because I think that it's not respecting themselves, it's not respecting society, it's not respecting the people they do it with. And I think it's very sad as well, because we got a situation where we got girls now almost embracing more of a degenerate behaviour. And it's sad because I feel like so many girls, and this is just based on talking to girls, it's like the standard for treating people like human beings is just depleting and depleting. And it's similar with like the fall of Rome, like what it means to be a human being and treat someone with love and compassion and respect is going. Like, I hear people, they'll hook up with someone, they won't even remember the name of the person. I mean, they've just gave the most sacred act possible to that person without, you can't give anything more to someone and they don't even remember the name of the person they just had sex with. And that's becoming more and more common with young people, and it's very disturbing. And simply to say that's disturbing is now almost becoming controversial because we're so used to it. And people know in their souls, they know it's bad. People can run and hide. They can say, oh, I'm just doing it, I enjoy it. Well, maybe it's not for you. But I think people in their core, they know it's wrong. They know it's wrong because there is nothing wholesome, beautiful, loving about waking up with someone where you don't love them and you've just had sex with them.
So I mean, if I'm going to introduce a term called asymmetric love, okay? And what I mean by asymmetric love is, there's a boy and a girl who fancy each other, okay? If it's symmetrical, which means they both feel affection and love for each other. If you truly feel love for someone, in the purest meaning of love, you don't want to harm them or cause them pain. If it's asymmetric love, where one actually really likes the person, but the other, let's say there's a really good-looking guy, and the girls all fancy him because he's a really good-looking guy, but he is a bit of a player, right? So there's a girl who absolutely adores him. She thinks, oh my goodness, he's so gorgeous. And they get together, and she's desperate to try and be with him. She really wants to be with him. This can work both ways, all right? But I'm just using this as an example. And so what happens is he thinks he's on to it here. He's got a chance. And because, I hate to say it, but it's a fact, men are physically designed to spread their seed. We have the opportunity to spread our seed.
Don't know why I'm laughing like a 2-year-old.
Well, it is.
Like
it's you know,
little school kid.
I know, but
away.
it's kind of like an awkward conversation, isn't it? It's like,
funny.
oh gosh,
I don't know. It's just the way you're saying it.
cringy.
It's just cracking me up.
Well, sorry, spread his seed. Yeah. Actually, there's a theory called panspermia. It's to do with comets spreading. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, panspermia. Look it up. Yeah, it's about how planets became got life. You know, so these what they believe is that comets had like would transfer where anyway, it's called panspermia. Look it up. Anyway, I just came up with it because it was just talking about spreading a seed. I know. Okay, where was I going? Anyway, so you've got this lovely couple, right? This boy and girl, and it's an asymmetric situation. He fancies her. She's really hot, but she loves him, or she wants to love him. She wants a deeper meaning relationship with him. And so what happens is he in order to hook up with her, he has sex with her because she is showing herself to be keen. Okay, so then they have sex, and she's really happy about it. She's going around telling her friends, "Oh, you know, I got with John, and I can't believe that. You know, he's just amazing. He's such a lovely guy." And so far as he's concerned, it's a conquest, and he's not interested in her. Okay, what happens then? She's brokenhearted. Okay, she is then at a place where she's like, but you know, I gave myself to you because I love you and I wanted to be with you. And he's like, well, yeah, but you know, I'm not quite sure it's right. You know, what's that Meatloaf song? You know, that have you ever, it's just come to me. There's a lovely song which he's in a car, and the song goes, he's trying to go all the way with this girl, and right at the last minute she goes, will you love me forever? And he's like, he stopped. It's a brilliant song. I'll try and get it. Maybe you can play it at the end. It's a Meatloaf song, and it just captures the moment of where the guy basically wants to have sex, and she's like, no, I want love. Okay, so here we go. How is this going to work out? This can work in either way. You know, the boy, it could be the boy that's the victim, but someone in an asymmetric relationship is going to get hurt. Now, what happens to that girl or boy who's given themselves in a sacred way because they like that person? And generally speaking, I mean, I hear this from women, is that women struggle to give themselves if there's no love. But what happens to the girls who've tried to find love with guys, and all that's happened is they've been used and abused and left? They then turn into women who try to adopt that behaviour in order to take control back. So what then happens is you get girls now becoming sort of non-caring and using sex as a way to control the object of their interest, and vice versa. This can work with guys. And you know, I think when I was younger, I had a situation where I really loved this girl. I was really keen on her, and she kind of, as happens in teenage angst and teenage love, she kind of rebutted me. And as a result of that, I think I was so upset and so hurt that I was then scared to try and show my true affection. So then I became this kind of tough guy, you know, who couldn't be affected because I couldn't let it affect me. Because you have to be, to really be loving with someone, you have to bare yourself. You have to open yourself to that person. And if you bare yourself to someone who then replaces the beautiful thing you've given them with something ugly, then it can really affect you. And I think for many years, I think I was quite scarred. And I bet you there's a lot of people out there who would agree with me, who've been in situations where, they've given their love to someone, it's not been reciprocated, they felt really stupid, really felt used. The problem, again, here is what is the repercussions of these behaviours? What is going to happen to those people who are now have become, all of a sudden, that beautiful thing of love, they lose traction with it. They can't have it anymore. And so they start treating people equally as badly as they got treated.
I think you absolutely nailed it, and I guarantee there's a lot of people out there who will be like, "Oh my goodness, Steve, you spoke for me there." And I think at the heart of it, it's the separation of love from sex. Like, that's been dismantled because love is sex. Sex is love. They're both intertwined. They're the same thing. But now, people growing up, it's separated. So sex is a feeling, love is a action, when actually they are intertwined. Like, to make love with someone is the ultimate love. And now that's why when young people go out, like on a night out, and they hook up with someone, they don't need to love them because that's not love. When actually that used to mean love. So like my granny's generation, the implications of having a child with someone was a real possibility. So therefore, if you had sex with someone, that could entail, and that was seen upon as, if you had sex with someone, you loved them, obviously. But now it's inverted. I saw a great video where it speaks about how comedies nowadays, what it used to be was like, they were courts, they would, talk, walk and all that, and then they would love each other. But now they have sex with each other, and then they figure out if they love each other. And then the whole plot twist is, oh, they do love them or whatever. And I thought that was a brilliant point, because the scale of love and the steps of love have inverted themselves. You have sex with someone, then you decide if you love them. And that's inverted, because no wonder people are so confused when the act has been taken away from it. And I mean, I'm, quite traditional on this, so I have kind of different views around when people should have sex. But I think the key thing is a committed relationship, because if you're not in a committed relationship, surely what you give to someone should mean a lot to you, and it should mean a lot to the person you're with, and also respect for your future partner. Like, I think that's something young kids should get taught a lot nowadays, is like, your actions, think about your future partner and how that will make you look. And that will really change the way you look at it, I think. And that's not to say people don't make mistakes and stuff. People do. But it's to say that just talking about what love is with sex should not be controversial. It should not be controversial for me to say love is sex. That should not be a controversial statement. But it's so damn controversial these days, just simply to say that.
And you've absolutely nailed it. From that point of view, that we've got to be aware that sex should come out of love. That's where sex is placed. It is a product of love, okay, and there's no other place for it. That's where it is squarely, securely placed. If you love someone, you spend time courting them, getting to know them, making sure you actually really love them, that you respect them, you want to be with them, that it's a mutually symmetrical relationship where you both feel the same way. And remember what I've always said, my opinion, this is just my opinion, but I think it's a biblical perspective, is that the point at which you have sex, you are marrying that person. That is marriage. Which is why I find the word sex to be incompatible, because sex is, it's a term that almost obfuscates marriage. Okay, the act of marriage in the old days, he married her, would mean they had sex. The problem is everybody thinks, getting married is that event that happens in the church. No. That is the precursor ceremony to celebrate that two people are coming together to get married. They're going to get married. It's not when the ring goes on your finger. It's when the act occurs, because that is such a sacred act. And this is going to get right out there, but I was watching something interesting, and forgive me if this is blasphemous. I don't mean it to be blasphemous, but if you look at the actual word, I'm kind of slightly awkward about saying this, but they were trying to explain the word Yahweh, okay? And what it means is it means almost the explosive force of love and creation, okay, which is almost what happens in sex. That is how, I know it sounds awkward. And I mean, I remember listening to it thinking, whoa, that's a bit heavy. But I want to just present this to you, that act of creating a child has been ruined, has been taken apart, has been utterly dismantled. It has been now turned into pure pornography, okay? And in every possible way, it has been utterly ruined, in my opinion.
Yeah.
One thing I just wanted to finish off is that going back to the asymmetric relationships where one person is hurt and the other person is, there are people who have killed themselves because of an unrequited love or because they've been treated badly, okay? Don't just take this as, oh, they're not bothered. For some people, what you do to them is so profound that you could cause a situation which will affect that person for the rest of their life. You really could. Which is why we need to treat others as we would have them treat us. That is the basis of Jesus' teaching.
Amen. I mean, that's really powerful what you said about at the end, because it ties in with the first episode, which is individualism. That's what I always bring it back to. But when people's ideas of gains and what they want to get out of something is themselves, that's very dangerous. And I'm glad you brought up about the impact you can have on someone, of even to the extent them killing themselves, because like when someone truly loves someone, like that is something so special and sacred. And there's not many worse things when you see a friend and they have been almost shafted, or when
shafted.
when like,
see, this is the problem with slang. You know that term exactly.
Or like when someone has sex with someone, then they run off. Like, I think, because like it's one thing I think to get to know someone, it's another thing to have sex with someone, and that's the thing. Like sex is made for. It's made for marriage. It's a procreation. Yeah. It's a procreation. And marriage of a man and a woman coming together is designed for children. Now, if anybody wants to argue with me about this, feel free. Please, fill your boots. Come and have an argument with me and tell me that sex isn't for having children. Okay? I can't see how you can argue any other way. It's a pleasurable act. It's a beautiful act. The problem is, like we know, anything that's beautiful and pleasurable, what happens to it? Can be abused.
It can be abused, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's very sad. And the story you outlined, I think, can resonate with a lot of people, because I have friends of mine who are, and the sad thing about it is, I have a guy friend, for instance, and he was really in love with this person, and she didn't treat him. She treated him all right, and then towards the end, it was just terrible. And anyway, he ended it, but just because of how she was acting, when actually she wanted it to end, she just didn't end it. And that guy is like it's been a long time since, and he is in really bad straits. And I also know someone who they were really in someone, and it was going amazing. They were like, oh, this is the person, and they hooked up, and then they went off shortly after that, which is so sad. And that happens more and more for girls, where the only value they think they can add to a man's life is having sex with them. And isn't it sad that we have a culture where that's where, especially what it means to be a man, there isn't an enforcement, and that bringing it back to shame. I believe that we should actually have shame for men who do that. We should have shame, I think, for men who have sex with someone and then run off and leave a girl deserted. And there might be some small shame in the sense of their circle of friends, but a few years ago that would be like, oh my goodness, did you hear about this guy? And that would be a big, big deal. Now it's like, oh, standard. And isn't that so sad that we've got to a point in society where that's kind of like, that's a norm. That's a norm that girls just kind of get used to, that of men treating them like objects. I think that's incredibly sad.
It's also becoming like where guys are becoming objectivized as well. I mean, it's a bit bizarre. But, you know, I want to, there's a mea culpa here as well. You know, I forgive me, Lord, because I have sinned. You know, and I look back on my life, and there are aspects of my behavior which I am really not proud of. Okay. So anybody wants to come and tell me that I'm a judgmental prude, I can tell you that I'm saying these things from experience. Okay. Because you're not the only person who's experienced what you're experiencing. You know, we all, to a lesser or greater degree, have been in places which, and actually the lens of age, the perspective of getting older and looking back on your life with grey hair, and what I mean by that is the wisdom of maturity. You look at your behaviour, and I'm shameful. I'm shameful about the behaviours that I exhibited as a young man. Now, you could excuse that because you could say, well, you're young, you didn't know. Well, this is why Rory and I are having this conversation with you, because if, like I said right at the beginning, one of the things about talking to someone who's older is you can see the mistakes they made, and if you don't learn from a mistake, you're an idiot. You know, if you can't learn from your mistakes, well, you'll never learn. The mistakes are there to be made. To be made. Okay, make the mistake, learn from it, don't repeat it. I had a lovely boss ages ago when I first started out, and he said, Steve, I'll let you make one mistake, okay, and I'll forget about it. He said, if you make that same mistake a second time, I'm going to be really pissed off because it tells me that you're not learning. If you make it a third time, you're out. I'm not even going to discuss it with you, you're out. And I thought, wow, you know, that's the way it should be. Learn and make a mistake, learn from it. If you keep repeating that mistake and keep doing it, then no one can help you. Seriously, the only person that can help you is you. You know, start thinking about your behaviour. And I would say to every young man and every young woman, if you want to have a good life, because, you know, we use the word karma as if it's, but karma is also a Christian thing. You know, it's God's, it's the way of the world. If you do bad to others, it comes back on you. It's a fact. So if you start, you know, if you treat people well, you find people treat you well. If you treat people badly, guess what? So when you get these people saying, oh, you never guess what's happened to me, you never guess what's happened, and you're like, okay, that sounds pretty bad. You know, what's happened to you? Well, this person's done this to me and that's this to me. And then if you scratch... Now, I'm not saying this happens all the time because sometimes unfortunate events happen to even the best people. I'm not saying that. But generally, we all know people who are in a place of extreme anxiety because their lives are falling apart, okay? And sometimes you need to ask, why is that happening? All right. I knew a lady when I came out of my divorce. I'd been married for 16 years. I hadn't been dating. I wasn't aware of the world. I'd been in a closed environment. I suddenly come into this world, and she expressed her interest in me. And without going into too much detail, I suddenly discovered that actually she was playing around behind my back, and I was just totally blown away. I thought, is this what happens now? Is this normal? And sometimes she'd get me to look after her kids. And because I had my kids and her kids got on with my kids, and she'd go off to Tiger and like, yeah. And then I kind of realised this is not a good relationship. I don't want to be with someone like this. And I just thought, well, is it me? Am I being stupid? And then I found out that she started dating someone I knew, and she convinced him that I was a baddie and I'd behaved really badly. And I was like, wow, how can this be? You know, you've just taken the piss and you're now projecting that back on me. Anyway, about 3 or 4 months after his in that relationship, he rang me up. He said, Steve, I really want to apologise because we've been really horrid about you. We've really slagged you off. He said, by the way, everything you said about her is absolutely true. She's now done it to me.
No.
Yeah, she had guys around that she used to call her toys. So she would go when you look at it, actually, she'd been seriously hurt. When I get to look at it now, she'd been seriously hurt as a young girl, really badly hurt by some bad relationships. So what did she do? She flipped it. She flipped it, and then she went on to become an abuser, a relationship abuser. So, that's an experience that I, remember, and it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous.
Oh my goodness, Steve. Well, thanks for sharing that, and also thanks for being so open about your past, because sometimes when you make a small stance on something, people are like, oh well, they point the finger or they do this, when actually you can take a moral stance because you're learning. Everyone learns, everyone's on a journey, everyone grows, everyone changes. There's things you regret, there's things you wish you didn't do, but thanks for sharing that and stuff, because I think people relate to this. We're not some sort of puritanical nut jobs over it. We're just talking about what's kind of the best way we can honour each other on this planet. How can we show love? How can we be the best us? And also, treat people like human beings. And with hookup culture, which is becoming more and more prevalent with young people, it's sad to see that that's really all we can offer. And it's the ramifications of that are going to be massive. And why aren't people getting married? You could argue because people are having less committed sex with people. People are having sex with multiple partners. People doing this. Is it any wonder no one wants to settle down when they have poison the chalice of love? Is it any wonder? Is it any wonder why no one's having kids anymore? And we're gonna kind of go into an episode on that. It's going to be a controversial one for the future for sure. And I think to anyone who's listening who thinks we're kind of super judgy about all this, I just want to make it clear. The reason people hook up with people, there's multiple factors. For some people, it is pure narcissism. It is personal gain, individualism, no respect for the community, for the culture, for their fellow men or women, no respect for women as individuals, not objects. And to those people, I think that's just unbelievably scummy and should be called out. There's other people, they've been raped, they've gone through trauma, they're trying to reclaim it. I still think your actions are wrong and immoral. But I have more empathy of where you come from with that. And when we speak about the stuff we do, we never come from the place of we hate you, this or that, because there's always the path for change. There's always the you can redeem yourself. And that's the beautiful thing about Jesus and Christianity. You're never deserted. God always loves you. And I think it's a difficult line, because I know people who I do questionable acts, and I'd call them out as it is. I don't kind of beat around the bush with that. And I know they're going to do that anyway. But if you can be that voice of sanity to your friends or family members, I think it's a good thing to do. And it's also, you've lived your life and your kids are now growing up. But for me, I want kids in the future. 100%. I can't think of anything better than having kids, like I've always wanted to. And the way I act and the way I treat people, I know you got to think about, is that someone's daughter? What if that's someone's your own daughter, the way you're treating a girl? Is that someone's son, the way you're treating a man? Think about these things. And people can say, oh, that's overthinking it, you're thinking too much about it. When actually, no, you're analysing your life, you're analysing the future you want for your children. And not a lot of people do that. And what type of culture do you want them to grow into? And as a young person who wants kids, I know that if I'm not vocal about this, who's going to be vocal? There's not many people speaking out. You've got to speak out. What is the culture your children are going to inherit? You need to put two forks in the ground and say your piece, and people will call you arrogant, people will call you this and that, as happens to me a bit. But I'd prefer to be that than actually to try and curate a culture for my future children than to sit on the sidelines. And that's part of kind of the culture war, you could say, and the sexual morality that we've gone into. Because when you were growing up, there's a bit of taboo, there was a bit of disdain for it. But now there isn't the same thing. No, now it's just shameless. It's shameless. So sad.
I was just thinking about Jordan Peterson, who gave an interesting talk about narcissists. Sorry, we're going to use this term again. And, it's such an irritating term because I hear it more and more. But why is it? And funnily enough, that particular individual, it wasn't... I remember sitting in a bar being beside myself because I didn't know what was going on. I was completely lost. And I ended up talking to this guy, as you do, having a beer with the guy serving you beer.
Drowning your sorrows
with the barman, who is always the man of wisdom, like taxi drivers. They always seem to have something interesting to say. And he said to me, I'd never heard the term before. Now, obviously, I knew the flower narcissist, and I knew the story of narcissist from Greek mythology, which is what I shared earlier on. It was a shepherd who fell in love with his reflection. It's pure selfishness. It's loving oneself. That's what narcissism is. And then this guy, I told him what was happening because I was confused and in a really bad place anyway, because my marriage had ended, and I was, this is the first opportunity I had to meet someone, and wow, it was horrendous. And I was telling him what was happening, and he sat there. He couldn't believe, what was going on. And he said, oh yeah, she's probably got NPD. And I said, what's that? He said, it's narcissistic personality disorder. And I was like, and then this is how long ago? It's nearly 10 years ago. Okay. And this just shows, that's the first time I'd heard that term. Now it's used like, a cat can be narcissistic. Everybody's using if you don't like someone, they're narcissistic. It's not that. Narcissistic personality disorder is, it appears, I hate to say this because mental illness, is it mental illness? Is it just bad behavior? If you excuse it as mental illness, it almost allows you to behave like that. Oh, sorry, I can't help it. I've got NPD. Well, so what? Or I've got to take tablets for it. So you can't excuse your behavior. You cannot excuse your behavior. So don't try and use it. And this is the problem I have with these terms. They're trotted out very quickly, and it's a way of excusing people. But Jordan Peterson was interesting. He was saying that part of the problem that we've got is that it would appear that if you look at the setup of a narcissistic person, there is a relationship between narcissism and psychopathy, being a psychopath. Okay, they're very similar behaviors. And what you discover with these individuals is they are highly, highly sexed. Okay, it's about self-gratification. And they will do anything they can to try to get that self-gratification. And the bottom line is they don't give a shit about your emotions. As long as they're satisfied, that's what counts. And they will play you and play you and play you in order that they get fed. Okay, this is a form of vampirism. It is. I
haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, it is a form of stealing energy, of taking emotions, taking something from another person. Okay, and there's the energy thief and energy vampire. You find when you're with these people, they've actually said now that if you're in a relationship with a narcissistic person, it actually causes mental illness. It'll cause you to become anxious, ill, and worried, and it can have a long-term effect if you're with that person for quite a while because they're abusing you. Let's say it as it is. They are an abuser, okay, and we label it NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. Now, what's bizarre is that what Jordan Peterson was saying is that because they are so highly sexed and because they have this self-image, they're often very attracted by the opposite sex. The opposite sex finds them very attractive because they display all those kind of traits that you find that we are conditioned to find attractive. Confident, look after themselves. They are maybe erudite. Maybe they've got a way about them. They're stylish. They're charming. Okay. I've often heard it said, watch out for charmers. And I hate when people say, oh, you're charming. And I no, I don't say that to them. I don't want to be charming because what does the word charm?
Yes, from form of manipulation. Really.
Yeah, but it's also a charm is like a spell.
Yeah.
If you look at the actual, the context of the word,
yeah.
To charm someone is to cast a spell upon them.
Okay? I mean, it's sorry to interrupt, but
That's right.
Like, it's interesting you say that because there's someone I knew back a few years ago, and I would say I legitimately saw a social evil in them, and I've never seen it where and it's funny because my brother said to me, and this was crazy. This was, I don't want to give too much because I don't want people who know me to piece together who this is. But when I was younger, my brother said to me, watch out for that guy. Out of nowhere, my brother never says about anyone I've known ever. He said, watch out for that guy. He's got evil in him, right? Years later, I saw it. I saw someone who did not give a fuck what the repercussions of their emotions. And I later found out they did terrible things to girls. And I'm not an angry person. I don't get angry. I've never really. There's only a like tiny amount of times in my life I've ever been angry, and that is one person where I am angry. I actually have anger towards, and I think that like it's a real thing of a true narcissist and charm, and it's sad because the charm, the influence they have, but to other people it's oblivious. And I would say to people out there, if you ever do run into someone and you get the strong inclination of something a lot deeper, I'm not even saying in a spiritual sense, but just a gut sense of like, fucking hell, like this there's a different side here. Really do be careful.
Listen to your gut. Listen to your gut.
And stand upright and tall, and don't give into it. And what no matter what your friends are doing, what your friends think, if you think there's seriously something disturbing there, do not kind of dance with it, and be faithful in your own morality, because like what I did, I'm glad I did, and I've really kind of gone away from that, and I've also changed kind of my group of people I hang around with. But I would say to young people out there, and I'm talking in very kind of big terms, and I'm sure almost no one can relate, but if there is someone and you've seen a kind of a really serious dark side, do not kind of go along with it if it fits you socially to do so. It gives you a bit of clout. Just
Rory, I'm so glad you've brought this up, because I'm going to cover something now which I know a lot of people are going to be scornful and scoff and say, oh, he's bonkers. Okay, you can say what you like, but I want to cover this off, because there is an intrinsic spiritual element to sexualized behavior. Okay, it is probably one of the most used methods of the enemy. Okay, as you know, I don't know if you know, and I've spoken a lot to you about my faith and the development of my faith. As I grew in my faith, I started to realize that there was this demonic entities that are showed on TV. If you've watched all those kind of horror films, okay, it's not like that. It's not as bad as that. But there are times when things happen which will make you surprised at the reality of this wicked spiritual dimension. So I'm going to share something with you, okay? Because it just came to my mind, and I think it's important I share this, because I've done a lot of courses on Christian faith and what we call deliverance ministry. You know what deliverance ministry is? It's a weaker form of exorcism.
all right.
Okay. So it's quite a dark area. So I was involved, not with exorcism, because that's kind of a higher level, and I'm not a priest, and I wouldn't even start to get that. I have been involved with an exorcism where something happened to a friend's girlfriend, and we took her to a priest. It was just very simple. He prayed over her. Funnily enough, her and he both became Christians as a result of this, which is quite amazing. But there was nothing dramatic. There was no head spinning, vomiting, blood squirting, nothing like that. But I have witnessed things, and I've seen things, and I've heard things which have convinced me that in certain scenarios, the curtain parts, and you see what's behind the world that we see with our normal eyes. So this happened. That individual I was talking about, it's just kind of like a bit of an awkward conversation, but I'll explain it. I was having a chat with her. I was sitting on the kitchen counter talking to her, and I was trying to understand her behavior, because I was challenging her on her behavior. And out of the blue, without any prompting, she turned away from me. Her head turned in an awkward angle, and she said to me in a voice which I was like, what the fuck, where did that come from? And it went like this. She said to me, "You can ride my back," like that. And I was like, Did I?
This is creeping me out, Steve. I'm getting goosebumps.
Okay. You decide. This actually, I wouldn't.
Oh my goodness.
I wouldn't tell you this. I'm not making this up.
I got goosebumps.
Well, you should do. You should do because, and I've experienced other things like this. Okay, this is probably one of the worst. Where literally this out of the box, and I sat there and I thought to myself, and then she just turned around and carried on talking normally, and I was like, I said, what did you say? She goes, what? I said, what did you say? She goes, I didn't say anything. I was like, oh my God, did I imagine that? Now, try and work this out. Why would I make that up? I have no reason to make it up, okay? Because it's so bizarre. And the detail of it is such that, I'd have to be really sick to make that up, to try and impress anybody.
Steve, I've actually got shivers.
Yeah.
I actually got legit shivers.
I really hope people do get shivers because, we are literally a gnat's breath away from falling into an abyss, okay? Because of the way the world is going, okay? What you see on TV, the greatest thing that the enemy has done is convince people he doesn't exist and convince people that stories like that are bullshit. Okay, I'm not bullshitting, and I've experienced some other things which I'm not going to discuss now. I've been involved with praying for people, and I've seen things. I've stopped. It got to the point where I had to pull back from it because if you're not covered, if you're not having prayer covering you, if you're not being, how can I say, blessed, and if you're involved in that area, you can have a lot of stuff happen. And I suddenly realised that I wasn't as protected as I thought, so I had to pull right back.
Oh my goodness, Steve! Oh my goodness! I mean, a lot's taken there. I got shivers listening to that. And to anyone out there who let's say you're an atheist listening right now, just ask yourself this, right? Because this is a good thing which I heard. People could dismiss God all day long, miracles, any of that, right? Have you seen evil, or do you think evil exists? And they'll be like, yeah. But then they don't believe in the opposite. Because the realm of negativity and hatred and despise and, to use the word demonic's a big deal, but to, levels of depravity which you wouldn't think are even possible. Like, when you see certain things, you could have no spiritual faith at all, and you would say, oh my goodness, that is evil. Or a mass murderer, or not even a mass murderer, like there's things in the world that are so beyond the realm of good that there is no other way to describe them but evil. Even if you are the most atheist, secular person on the planet, you will experience things, you will see things on TV, and you'll be like, that is evil. There is no other way of describing it. And I also want to add things like love, things like like love, for instance, the most powerful emotion kind of imaginable, and the thing that kind of changes the world and how we live. Like, we don't see that. We don't see love, but we all agree it's this thing called love. And most people agree in things that there's such thing as evil, right? But with good, there's such a dismissal of that. Now, Steve, you've told me that story, and I do believe you. That's what you saw, and I'm not denying that. My brain is going in every direction about, is that true? Were you dehydrated, or for instance,
was I drunk? No, I wasn't. I was sober. I mean, you of course you might, because it is out of the ordinary.
Yeah, and I can relate to that to an extent, because I remember the person who I spoke about, who I saw evil in them, and there was it wasn't even a big thing that happened. It was very small. I saw into their eyes. And I saw, I don't know how to describe it, a kind of almost embracing of what they had just done. And when someone embraces something evil,
find joy in that, they're enjoying what they've done.
Almost like a spark of, and I think that to just dismiss the spiritual realm completely, I wouldn't do it, and I don't. And I would say I'm a rational guy, right? That's why I always talk about, well, from the atheist perspective, even if you think that this, I always go like that. I always try and nuance it out. But I would say, don't dismiss that, because there's a lot of suffering and pain in the world, but there's also a hell of a lot of good. And if you go to other cultures, parts in Africa, it's a different realm of what's normal. Yeah. Like, to experience certain things, and people say, oh, exorcism, people think they have demons, that's just them feeling something. Let's say you're right, they're still feeling it, and there's still things priests are doing, and still kind of people praying, that still is having an effect. Even if it's completely placebo, there's still benefits to even kind of indulge that to an extent. And I would say to anyone who kind of has wrote off anything we've said about this, I'm not saying, I don't really know my view on exorcism and stuff, I don't, but one thing I would 100% say is I don't dismiss it. And anyone who dismisses it, you've got to be a bit wary, because you are dismissing such a unknown realm of society, or things we can even encapsulate. Like people describe it as human beings, we're like a radio frequency, we're like 93.7 expressive, whatever, and like that's all we see. The spiritual realm is a different part of that. And also people believe in ghosts, but they don't believe in,
I know. Yeah,
exactly. You see what I mean? There's just endless. But anyway,
I just want to finish off something, because I couldn't get to the point that I made about Jordan Peterson. And the point I want to make, because this is quite important, what he was saying is, because the narcissistic, psychopathic individuals are so attractive, they tend to procreate at a faster rate. Think about that. Okay, there's these really good-looking guys. They're very successful. They're top of the ladder. They're the type of guys that want to be seen, want to be impressive. They attract all the women, because that's kind of like what we're designed. Look at the successful guy. Look at the guy. He's got a nice car. He's got a great job. He's very successful. We've covered this. He's doing all those things.
Not successful, not fulfilled.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Maybe not fulfilled. But the point I'm making is that these particular types of individuals are those ones who attract at a higher rate the sort of trophy wives, if you want to put it that way, than the quiet, empathetic, nice guy who doesn't go around behaving like that. Okay, so what happens is they're procreating. What are they procreating? Now, I'm not saying that all children born to a psychopathic narcissist is going to turn out to be a psychopathic narcissist, because I actually do believe that nurture plays a more important part than nature, because it's been known that psychopathy is quite a common attribute within people, and it doesn't necessarily mean, if you're a psychopath, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going around killing people, murdering people, but it means you have an intensity of behavior which is more than would be expected of someone who didn't have that trait. Okay, so and I sometimes they're not, when you see things, and I'm just going to go back to that whole other realm of things, because I just want to validate something. So it's not just me that sees these. I was in a prayer circle it was a prayer group with a pastor from a church, and we'd gone to speak to a group of people giving a talk about various Christian things, and there was a lady in there, and I'm not going to say too much, because she had a strange physical affliction. Okay, it wasn't anything really bad, but she was noticeable because of this affliction. And I was kind of watching her, and I suddenly realised that I could see, and I was like, did I just see that? And it's almost like I could see another pair of eyes, okay, looking at me, kind of like, sort of, yeah. And I remember thinking, and I had to like look again. I thought, no, I'm not going to say anything. I thought, no, stop being stupid, Steve. You're being an idiot. You're imagining things, because that's what you do. Okay. And I was like, oh, okay. So I wasn't going to say anything, because I just thought I was being an idiot. Okay. And I'm trying to just make a point here. Anyway, after we'd finished, the pastor who was with me, we got in the car, and he looked at me and he said to me, just out of the blue, he said this. He said, I don't know what her name was. I'm making a name up. Okay. Deirdre. He said, he said, did you notice Deirdre? And I looked at him as if to say, yeah. And he said, oh God. He said, it's like she had some eyes. Did you see the eyes? And I looked at him and I said, what? And I described what I'd seen. He said, yeah, he'd seen them. And that absolutely blew me away, because I hadn't said anything to him, and I wasn't going to say anything, because I thought it was the light. I thought I was mental. I thought I was seeing something. But he got in the car, and because he'd seen what I'd seen, he was like shaken about it. He couldn't work it out. So I just want to try and say to you that there is something that's hidden from a lot of us. Okay, if you go to, like you said, if you go to countries like Africa and places like that where...
Continents.
Sorry. I beg your pardon.
Bad.
That was such an ignorant thing to say, isn't it?
Goodness.
Oh, the country of Africa. Yes. Sorry. The continent of Africa, which is made up of lots of beautiful countries. But where people are more connected to the earth, where people are more connected to the spiritual realm, we are almost excluded from that. Why is that? It's really strange, isn't it? We don't have that empathy anymore. Some people do, others don't. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up to say that what we're discussing here, Rory, might seem to a lot of people as a banal topic of conversation. Oh, God, all these young people behaving like the hookup culture. It's like, I just want to say to you that there is something serious, very, very serious, about a culture that decays to the extent that ours has decayed by allowing and accepting and almost celebrating this culture. Okay. And the reason I'm bringing up this kind of spiritual side of things, and any of you, if you want to challenge me and say to me that I'm talking crap, feel free. I can, if you want to have a conversation with me, come and have a conversation with me. And I think at the end of that conversation, you'll either think I'm completely bonkers, or I think hopefully you'll get the point that I'm making. Anyway, we've got to be very careful that we don't allow ourselves to be hoodwinked and taken into a world where, things are just going to get worse and worse and worse.
Amen. Like, spot on. And I think everyone listening, I hope that you've taken a lot from this. You've analysed your own actions, maybe your past actions, or what you're going to do moving forward from now on. Before you do the sacred act of hooking up with someone, some random stranger on night out, you think to yourself, do I respect myself more than this? Would I want my son or daughter to do this? Would I want my son or daughter to experience this? Am I living like the man or woman that I want my son or daughter to experience in the future? And if you think, oh, well, that's fine, then I question what type of future relationship you want your kids to experience. But thank you, Steve, for coming on the show.
Can I just say one thing, which I really want to say, and I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to finish this off. When I did those courses in spiritual warfare, one thing that's very clear is that when you have sex with someone, not only are you exchanging bodily fluids, as it were, but you are also exchanging a spiritual connection. When you have sex with someone, there is a spiritual element to that physical act. Now, with those who've studied the stuff that I've studied, who are aware of spiritual warfare, if you've done that, you will know that what I'm saying is very well accepted, very well known, that if you sleep with a partner who has been involved in the occult or been involved in areas that are not godly, that can pass to you. That can pass to you. Okay, so feel free to have a laugh. Feel free to take the piss. Feel free to say, oh, he's a nutcase. Don't believe me? Go and try it. No, don't do that. I don't mean that. That's just like me being aggressively horrible, challenging you. What I'm trying to say is, if you sleep around, you don't know what that person's been up to, okay? And it is very, it's a truth that's held within the Christian faith that if you sleep with people who've been involved in, some of that satanic stuff, Luciferian stuff, and you sleep with that person, you can be infected with that.
Well, I mean, we'll save that for another episode. I won't give my perspective on that. But I think I do agree with the spiritual implications when you sleep with someone. It's more than just the act. Anyone can say that in their right mind, because when you commit the act wrong, you feel that, and that gives you a insight, I think, into that. Because if there was nothing there, why do you feel this the day after? Why do you feel so degraded or shame or this or that? Like, why? What is that?
Exactly.
If there's nothing spiritual, if it's just the action, then why is there all this other external emotions and your soul and like Anyway, we could definitely do another episode on this because it's been an absolute pleasure. But thank you so much.
Do you want to do one on spiritual warfare?
I mean, we'll say that for a bit later. I think people will be a bit freaked out early on.
I think it is something that people need to be aware of. I really do, because we live in a world where it's very easy to discount these things. And maybe if people realise just at what risk your soul is at, then maybe some of you will start to think a little bit more deeply about your behaviour. Do you want me to quickly read? Have I got time?
Yeah.
Okay, so I basically did a quick. I got some Bible passages which I wanted to. I mean, it's a shame we don't have the time to read through some of these. I wish I'd come up with these before. But let me just read these. So there's a lot of stuff about sexual immorality in the Bible, but what I wanted to do was mainly focus on the ones that were in the ones that were given to us from Jesus and the New Testament. This is 2 Corinthians 12. So now, these are from the letters of Paul. Okay, so this isn't Jesus speaking; these are letters from Paul. The Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are what Jesus said. Okay, and I'll try and find one of the comments that he made. He didn't speak a lot about this, funnily enough. It's quite interesting, but the things he did say was really hard hitting. I'll try and find that. I'm sorry, we're running out a little bit of time, so I'm going to try and rush through a couple of these. I wish I had longer on this. 2 Corinthians 12:21. I'm afraid that when I come again, God will humble me before you, and I will be grieved over many who have sinned earlier and have not repented of the impurity, sexual sin, and debauchery in which they have indulged. Okay, so again, it's not celebrated. Ephesians 5:3. But among you there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality or any kind of impurity or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. Again, they're asking people to consider. However, this is Ephesians 5:33. However, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. That's really an unpopular thing to say, okay? But there is an order, and I'm not going to discuss that right now.
No, future episode.
Yeah.
The gender roles.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I hope I'm close to these.
Yeah, that's good.
And then Galatians 5, the acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, and debauchery. So marriage should be honoured by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. This is a huge area, especially St. Paul was really hot on this, and I can there's a lot more to read, but I'm acutely aware. So I want to just finish with this, and this maybe can be the final reading for today. 1 Corinthians 6, verses 13 to 20. You say, food for the stomach and the stomach for food, and God will destroy them both. The body, however, is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. By his power, God raised the Lord from the dead, and he will raise us also. When they talk about the Lord, talking about Jesus. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ himself? Shall I then take the members of Christ and unite them with a prostitute? Never. Do you not know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her in body? For it is said, the two will become one flesh. What did I say about marriage? But whoever is united with the Lord is one with him in spirit. Free from sexual immorality, all other sins a person commits are outside the body. But whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price, the death of Jesus on the cross. Therefore, honour God with your bodies.
Wow. That is powerful. Very, very powerful. And I think it can be a guiding torch to life, and because relationships and sex is such a massive part of people's lives. It is the driving force of so many decisions, both politically and in person, with how men act, what men do with their lives, what men aspire to be. Like, so much of that is built upon sex and relationships, and that is why it's so important to have a good steering to that. I think what you said there really is. But thank you so much, everyone, for listening. It's been episode 4 of Incite. It's incredible. We're already on episode 4. Wow. Yeah, bonkers stuff. We're coming into episode 5, and we do have, and I'll say, we're going to do a live event if anyone's listening. Not many people. Actually, loads of people listen yet. But if you are still listening, we are going to do a live event. I'm just talking to the venue. So keep your ears open for that. Do follow at Reg Podcast on Instagram, because I will be posting the details there first and then obviously speaking about it. But it's going to be something very big. It's going to be my first in person. I've been talking about doing a live event for 1 year, but it's actually coming into the works now. And with this new show, Incite, it's going to be a fascinating talk. And also, if you are listening, please do follow me on at Reg Podcast or Rory Podcast on Twitter, or email theradicalenglisggentleman@gmail.com, because what I want to start doing is a bit of spice to the episodes. We get in people's questions, problems they're dealing with, and we actually discuss them, because I thought that would be a fantastic thing to do. So from next episode, we're going to be getting in some of your guys' problems. Please do reach out. What are you struggling with? Relationships, with work. What are you doing? Feel like, are you depressed? Are you this? Are you that? Like, do you have a bad relationship with your parents? What's going on there? Like, we want to hear it. We really do care about every single one of you who do listen to these episodes each week. We care about you so much. And if you are listening, please do share this with a friend or family member. It is the only way this grows. So please do share around. And please do give it the rating if you're listening on iTunes. It would mean a lot. Give a rating and give a comment. It would be appreciated if you hate or love the show. And more and more people are rating it, so thank you so much. It means a lot. And follow me at Rory. So I'm yawning.
Rory, what's happening, my friend? You're so tired.
At Rory Podcast on Twitter. Rory at Reg Podcast on Instagram. And any last words, Steve?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a prayer. Is that okay? All right. So I just want to pray for all of us and all of those of you who are struggling with this area. So, glorious, loving Father God, we give you thanks and praise for all the wonderful things you've given us, for this beautiful world, for our families, for our friends, for everything that you provide us with. And thank you, Father God, for the gift of sex, and thank you for the gift of love that Jesus reintroduced us to in many respects. And we just thank you that we are able to love one another the way Jesus and you love us. And let us, Father God, please help us to love each other as you would have us love ourselves. Let us be kind, gentle, respectful and caring for one another. And if anybody there is struggling with anything we've said, I ask that you bless them and you meet them in their need. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen. Beautiful stuff, Steve. And if you are listening, you can catch the political show, which is every Thursday at 6 o'clock every single week. Or if you just want to stick around for the Sunday sermon, like a lot of you do, a lot of you just tune in for the Sunday sermon, then it is every single Sunday at 9 o'clock. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for tuning in. I fucking love every single one of you. And we will catch you very soon. It is a bye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me.
Peace.